Hi, class. Last week we considered what critical thinking is, the use of logic and reliable evidence to arrive at a conclusion. By the term conclusion, I mean a decision we need to make, a solution to a problem we choose, or a position we take on an issue that is important to us. You've probably already figured out that we are not using the term critical to mean disagreeing with something we hear. Instead, we are using the term critical to mean critique. We step back from the reasoning used to arrive at a conclusion, whether that is someone else's reasoning or our own. By zooming out like this, we can, as objectively as possible, assess the strengths and weaknesses of that reasoning. Just as we assess the quality of our nutrition plans for our family, or the quality of our current skill at music or athletics or study skills, we can assess the quality of reasoning that we encounter. Doing so, situation by situation, can improve the personal, academic, and career decisions we make, and therefore our lives as a whole. Last week, we noted the components of good critical thinking and the barriers we are likely to encounter when attempting to reason soundly. Understanding the barriers to good critical thinking is essential to identifying them in both our own reasoning and in the reasoning of others when they arise. Why in the reason of others? Our thinking is affected by the thinking we hear from other people. As you know, there are many ways to reason narrow-mindedly. None of the types of narrow-minded thinking give equal value to reasoning used by someone whom we either have not noticed or whom we disagree with. To think critically in fair-minded ways, ways that respect other viewpoints and the reasons for them, we need to step out of our human tendency to view the world and issues primarily in familiar ways. Instead, we need to notice which groups we have not heard from and seek them out so we can listen to their viewpoints with the same respect we expect from others. Doing so has two major benefits. It increases our ability to interact with others regardless of whether we agree with them, and it helps us understand our reasons for our own viewpoints more clearly. What are your favorite ways to seek out viewpoints that you have not heard before? Here are two of mine. The Undertold Stories Project, currently housed at the University of St. Thomas in Minnesota. For example, this story on a school in Thailand with a different spin on education than the ones I am mainly familiar with. Some of their documentaries are aired on PBS NewsHour. You can find them on the Undertold Stories website. Some of the Witness series of documentaries broadcast and archived by Al Jazeera English until the news organization's rights to them expire. For example, this documentary on 3 old women who did not move out of the contaminated region surrounding Chernobyl's still toxic nuclear disaster. Unfortunately, Babushkas of Chernobyl is no longer available for free online. I mention it to encourage you to explore other Witness documentaries. Sources similar to these two can broaden your viewpoints and narrow any tendencies toward ethnocentrism. Okay, this week we concentrate on another aspect of how being human affects our ability to reason and communicate our reasoning. Our minds love to make thoughts. Those thoughts generate emotions. Those emotions generate more thoughts. Of course, decisions and actions result from both thoughts and emotions. Conversely, actions and decisions affect new thoughts and emotions. As you can see from this Venn diagram that shows the interdependence of thoughts, emotions, and actions, it's important to be aware of what our thoughts are and what our emotions are if we are to think critically and self-regulate our thinking and our words and other types of action. As good critical thinkers, it's also important to remember that a thought is simply that, a thought. We can decide whether or not to believe that thought about ourselves, about others, about situations and issues and decisions. So it takes awareness of thoughts and emotions to think critically, and it takes deciding how to use those thoughts and emotions or not. Once we're aware of the interaction of our thoughts, emotions, and actions, we can use that top level of thinking, analysis, to conclude how to respond situation by situation. Awareness of our emotions also affects our ability to interact with others. If you are working in a business, or if you manage or plan to manage, you probably know there's a lot of research out there that says the difference between a so-so manager and an excellent manager is his or her emotional intelligence, often called EI. This research compares results of managers who have the needed management skills, but different levels of EI. For example, Goldman's 2014 summary, which you can find linked in the references for this lecture. Please do take a moment to take the short version of the Emotional Intelligence EQ test on page 47. Don't miss how the answer to the test on page 435 tells us that the lower our score on each EQ question, the higher level we have of that aspect of emotional intelligence. Enjoy digging into the benefits and drawbacks of our human emotions when we are trying to reason. Then learn about different ways we can communicate both our position on issues and our reasons for that position. Just as good critical thinkers listen fair-mindedly to other viewpoints so they avoid narrow-minded thinking, good critical thinkers communicate in ways that show awareness of different communication styles. These styles vary by individuals and by culture, as well as by situation. Our goal, of course, is to communicate effectively so we can share our viewpoints with a minimum of misunderstanding. When we communicate clearly and with sensitivity, we can use critical thinking to analyze different arguments for points of view. Don't miss the self-evaluation on communication styles on page 82 and the answers on page 435 so you understand this aspect of your communication. As you think about which individual communication styles you use most often, consider questions like, do I need to be more explicit, more assertive, less assertive? Why? In which kinds of situation do I need to improve my communication style the most? And how can I best reason with someone who is using a very different communication style? Okay. Purposes for communicating are important to notice too. They include those listed as functions of language on page 68, as well as to persuade others to agree with our position. After you read about emotive words, look and listen around you. I'm sure you'll find many. Need a laugh? Read and share with a friend the examples of euphemisms on page 88. In the interests of humor and clear communication, each year, the National Council of Teachers of English awards a doublespeak award for the use of euphemisms and other manipulative or evasive forms of language. Here is a sample of 2 such awards. To summarize, just as it's important to be aware of the interaction between our human thoughts, emotions, and actions, it's essential to our critical thinking development to notice types and purposes of communication and how to communicate sensitively to different audiences. Here are some critical thinking questions for this week. What kinds of definitions have I used in this lecture? How many examples of manipulative or persuasive communication techniques have you seen already today? What other styles of communication have you encountered today? Did you critique those examples of communication or take them at face value? How does this week's study affect your awareness of ways to reason well or not so well, and of ways to communicate that reasoning? Have a great week too.